Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you a bit about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I've been playing a lot of it. Haven't finished it, for reasons that we'll get into, and I'm probably not going to finish it, again for reasons we're going to get into. But I've been playing a lot of it. Since I live in Australia, I was able to get a copy of it like a week ago, and I'd said to myself, if I can't get it finished by the time it actually comes out, I'll just, screw it, record on what I've played and what I've got, and just put it up on the internet, because why not? I've spent a bit too much time on this already, and I'm not going to finish it. I got about 20 hours in, by the way, which is actually pretty close to the end. I got to the point where they were very actively telling me, alright, here's your last set of side quests. Once you go inside the Shinra building, that's it, you're done, you're on a straight line again. And I appreciate the warning, because they do that a lot. They put you on a straight line of events that you can't avoid a lot. The game is very linear. Almost extremely, actually. There's a few mini-games here and there that you can play, but other than that, and they give you side quests in batches. They give you 6 the first time, 3 the second time, which is a weirdly small amount. And then it's like 9? So I thought to myself, you know, I'm just going to try and get to the end, but then after a bit of banging my head against the wall, I was just like, nope. But anyway, funny thing is, I never actually finished the original Final Fantasy VII, and for those of you who know what the deal with the Final Fantasy VII Remake is, you'll be thinking to yourself, oh shit, he's not going to be able to tell us anything useful, is he? And to be fair, story-wise, almost not true. I have played through the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII, but when I got past it, I put it down for a bit, thinking, alright, I'll come back to this a little later. And then the memory card I kept the save game on died, so I never got any further than Midgar. But strangely enough, this game takes place entirely in Midgar, which is cool, interesting. It's the entire Midgar section, so fine. Why not? I'll try it out, I'll see if I like it. So, I will say that the overall presentation of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually pretty goddamn impressive. Now, I didn't play it that long ago. I didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII that long ago, so being able to see just in my mind's eye what it used to look like and then what it looks like now is actually a pretty impressive step up. Everybody looks how they're supposed to. Everybody sounds pretty much like you would imagine. Especially Barrett, although Barrett sounds a little bit more stereotypical than you might think. But the game itself looks great. You've got a bunch of stuff that looks exactly like it used to. You've got a bunch of new areas that they've put in which look a bit more generic, if I'm being perfectly honest. But it definitely all lends to the overall atmosphere of Midgar and just how much of a depressing place that it is, at least in the game's universe. Admittedly, the characters are a little bit over the top. I mean, Cloud's hair never changes no matter what sort of situation he gets in, and it's so freaking weird to watch his hair just bob up and down a lot as he walks and runs around the place. It's just bizarre. How much hair gel does that guy keep in there? But they still all look about how they're supposed to. Hell, some of the characters have been given a pretty massive upgrade, especially Jessie. Jessie's definitely gone a bit like waifu lover bait, basically. She's become a bit of a tease. It's weird. It's honestly really weird, but, well, they've done it. The story is also presented in a few weird and not so weird ways, mainly in the sense that they've actually added a lot of stuff. Like, as far as I can remember, this whole section that I'm showing on the screen here, this is around chapter 4, by the way, so it's not massively full of spoilers, but, you know, if you care about this, you probably wouldn't be watching this video anyway, so whatever. They've added all sorts of new little sections in along the way, like how you wander across rooftops with Aerith, how you end up lost in a bloody sewer for ages. They do add a bunch of things like that, but here's the thing. Most of them feel entirely tacked on, especially towards the end of the game, the part where I gave up, where they make you go through an overly long sewer section, only to bring you up and then send you right back down to the same sewer with the same sorts of fights with the same sorts of enemies. There's a few situations like that where it ends up feeling really padded out, and it's a massive pain in the neck, if I'm being perfectly honest. They could have done a fair bit better by cutting out some of the more weirder sections. Like, there's this one section, it's chapter 12, I think, where you end up having to go through a train yard. And that train yard has a bunch of ghosts in it that you need to fight, then a big massive ghost that you have to fight. And then at the very end, you just get like a little bit of extra characterization for Aerith, and then the plot just goes on like the train graveyard section never happened. It's really bizarre, and this happens a fair bit. There's chapter 6, I think, is this huge like underground exploration bit where you have to go, well, not underground, it's actually like below the plate but above the ground, where you have to try and get across like these sorts of catwalks that are all over the place that you need to... It's basically just a giant maze you need to go through, fight monsters, get the thing, and then come back and go on through. And it just feels like it's arbitrarily lengthening the game. There's a few sections like that. Those are the two most obnoxious ones that I really had the time to see. But yeah, it's a little bit too long for its own good. And this isn't really helped out by the combat. Now, when I say that in a way that the combat actually starts out great. Like, there's nothing particularly wrong with the combat in the first half of the game. It's when the second half starts that it gets obnoxious. So, the combat is like Final Fantasy 15. You've got a regular attack, you've got a special move on triangle, which varies between your 4 playable characters. You've got Aerith, Barret, Tifa, and Cloud. Cloud's got basically a heavy mode, which makes him move slower and hit harder. Tifa's got a special attack that can be charged up for even more power. Barrett's got a overkill gun, which will then do a bit of extra damage after a little bit of time. And what's-her-face, Aerith, has a charge-up spell. Of course, you've got standalone spells. You've got individual abilities, including different weapons you can swap out for different extra abilities that you can learn if you use the weapon long enough. Neat idea. Weapons are individually upgradable, but I just set them all to be like, focus on attack, please, and they just do it, because going in and assigning the little points you get every time you level up is a surprisingly arduous process. The amount of times I forgot to do it for a while, and then had to go back and actually do it in order to actually increase my stats was, and actually be like relatively useful, was surprising, just how many times I had to do it, which is why I recommend you just do the automatic thing. You do, of course, have materia, but you don't get very many options to play with it. It's like slottable gems that give you extra abilities. They can be like magic. They can be things like increase the amount of mana you have, increase the, make some damage every time you do a dodge. And then you've got combo materia, which do things like add elemental materials to your weapon, make it so that your spells go across multiple enemies at the same time, but do less damage as a result. That stuff's cool. They just really don't give you that many opportunities to play around with it, because a lot of the weapons that you need to actually get like those combo slots that'll actually make those neat strategies work don't come up very often. And even then, if you want to like learn a new weapon's special ability, you have to swap to that, which means not being able to use that ability, and then you have to swap back when you're done. And not to mention some of the weapons are weaker than the other ones. So you might want to keep a certain sword on Cloud, for instance, which actually makes this entire bit of it a pain. But the actual combat itself is actually pretty good. Like, there's nothing really wrong with it, as I said at the start of the game. You've got a dodge attack, you've got your regular and your heavy attacks, you've got your options in terms of ability, spells, and items that you can use. And you control one character at a time, but you can swap to any other character. And you can also order them to use any of their special abilities, their spells, or their items at any time, which is not, like, it's a good idea. It's a good concept, but here's the thing. Your AI companions are actually kind of dumb. They don't really know what to do with their abilities. They don't really know the right time to use spells. And, well, yeah, don't even ask them to use items. So, the only way I've found that you can modify certain behaviors is to use, like, a specific materia that will let them automatically cast healing spells a certain amount of times per battle. I'd like to be able to customize the AI behavior a lot more down to the point. Like, you know, if you've got the MP available to use this attack on this enemy, do it. Otherwise, you know, just something that would make the AI partners a little bit smarter, because it seems like they just aren't particularly helpful unless you're guiding them by the hand every half second. This isn't helped by the one major thing about the combat that kills Final Fantasy VII Remake for me. It was the one reason why I didn't want to play any further than getting towards the end game. And that is that the AI in this game is an absolute douche canoe, and here's why. The enemy AI will always focus on you, the player. It doesn't matter what character you're controlling. It doesn't matter what the other AI characters are doing at the time. All that matters is who you are using at the same time. So, you could be Cloud, Tifa and Barret could be beating the shit out of a monster, and you can run away, controlling Cloud, right? And this monster, despite the fact it's getting the shit kicked out of it from both sides, will run straight at you and beat the shit out of you, no questions asked. Not the worst thing in the world in the beginning of the game. In fact, I barely noticed it. But once you start getting to around chapter 12 is where things really start to fall apart, because you have these weird combinations of enemies or monsters that will swarm in and will constantly attack what character you are. And I mean this in the sense that if you're controlling one character, then swap, you'll see every single enemy, and I'm talking like 3 or 4 enemies at a time, turn towards you like they saw your soul being transferred from the previous character's head to the current character's head, and they will run straight at you and not let you do anything, and it is fucking nuts. It is legitimately nuts just how much this bullshit gets in the way when you're trying to do anything at all. There are multiple situations where the enemies can take advantage of this as well. So you'll end up going up against these things called the Sahagin. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. Excuse me, please, my nostril tried to clog up on me there. There are these things you have to fight called the Sahagin in the sewers. And they are monstrous to deal with. Absolutely monstrous. Because they have these attacks that you can't dodge. They're jumps. And you cannot dodge them to save your life. You can only block them. But I have seen some Sahagin start their jump. Then you swap away in order to avoid the fact that you can't block or dodge this attack. And then the Sahagin will come down on the character that you've just taken control of. They're also like one of the worst enemies in the game because they have the ability to turn enemies into your characters into toads, which makes them almost unturnable to deal with. To fix the fact that you're toads, you have to rely on these items that are extremely rare to get. Like seriously, I only ever found 2 on my entire playthrough, and I had to fight like 50 of these things. I don't know how often you're supposed to get the items, but something's not right there. And they're also weak to spells, including fire and ice. And ice spells in this game, I just want to go off on a tangent here because I fucking hate this. Ice spells are completely and utterly useless because you need to have the enemy stop moving completely. Because the way that all the ice spells work is that you cast them out, and when they hit an enemy, they're just a giant block of ice sitting in the air, and they explode after a small amount of time. The first impact doesn't actually deal damage, it's the explosion that deals damage, but they don't get hit stunned when they get that first initial hit. So, 80% of the time you'll use an ice spell, the enemy will just be like, huh? He tried that on me? And they'll just walk away, the ice spell explodes and it does no damage whatsoever. Compare this to fire, thunder, and wind magic, which all hit instantly. It's dumb. It is legitimately really dumb, and it makes those enemies so hard to deal with, especially since you only get like 2 ice materia, 2 fire materia, I should say. So you end up needing to just like use the L2 and R2 buttons to bring up the extra like dudes on your team and get them to throw spells out, while all the Sahagin rush you. Now, this isn't to say that they don't like... it's not like they don't attack other party members sometimes, but we're talking anywhere between 2/3 and 3/4 chance of them basically just losing interest in everything else around them and just going straight for you. When you're trying to do anything, this can be a pain. When you're trying to get an attack out, it's a pain because you'll get hit stunned. Sorry, my nostrils really aren't being friendly with me today. When you're trying to get out a spell, they'll hit stun you. When you're trying to get out an attack, they'll hit stun you. And by the way, if you try casting a spell but you get hit stun, you lose the mana anyway. Fuck that. When you try to basically do anything, enemies will just swarm you. So you basically have to rely on your teammates to be good at what they do. And yeah, I honestly just started to hate it as time went on, because it was like just getting constantly swarmed by assholes that would prevent you from doing anything. And as soon as you swap characters, the three of them would just lose interest in your previous character and then go straight for you and keep you on the defensive anyway. Now, there is like a little thing that Cloud gets in his mode where if you hold the block button, which is R1 by the way, which is legitimately dumb as a choice because I've never seen a game have block be on the R1 button. I legitimately don't think I've ever seen it. It's always been L1. It's been L1 for years. How did you get this the wrong way around? Anyway. Also, you can't change it. The options menu in this game is actually quite barren. But, yes, the overall just difficulty of the combat just goes up intensely towards the end of the game because of this bullshit, and I hate it. There are so many situations later on that feel like they're actively designed to exploit the fact that all the enemy are going to charge at you. Even if you manage, like, I've got several, well, I don't have several bits of footage, but I've seen several situations where I've tried to run from battle, despite the fact that my other two characters beating the crap out of them, everyone just turns and runs towards you. It is legitimately really bad, and I can kind of understand why they would go for, like, a mechanic like this. Because you want the player to be the center of attention. You don't want the AI characters to be the ones being under attack all the time, and I can understand that, but they swung way too far the other way, and it just makes the last few chapters incredibly painful to play through. And the worst thing is, like, I played through this on normal all the way up to this point, and I said to myself, you know, I'll put it down to easy just to see what the difference in difficulty is like. And I did. And it was literally a pushover. Like, I went into a battle with full health and I lost all three of my characters and died. I put the difficulty down to easy after like 3 retries. And then I went straight back in and it was just like, yeah, I just steamrolled them. Didn't even lose 10% health on each of them because there's only 2 options, easy and normal. And there's also classic, which basically takes control of your characters and lets you just do things like abilities and spells and items. And there is also apparently a hard mode, which among other things disables item usage, which sounds ridiculous because I don't know how people are going to be able to beat the Sahagin on hard mode without being able to use Maiden's Kisses. It's dumb. It is legitimately really dumb. Which is a shame because they give you a lot of tools to get around, like, certain things. Like, even the bosses, I thought, like, even a boss in the same chapter wouldn't be anywhere near as difficult as a bunch of Sahagin or a bunch of, like, the helicopter troopers you have to deal with. Just because of the way that they swarm you and the way that they will literally not give you, as the player character, a moment to breathe. Even the boss characters just don't push down on the difficulty that hard. And it's a shame because the other combat systems are actually pretty well put together. You can assess every single enemy that you find for tips on how to defeat them and how to get their stagger meters up. And once you get the stagger meter up, it's basically just free real estate damage, excuse me. So it's well put together in a lot of different ways, but it's just the AI just surrounding you every single time and just beating the crap out of you with no justification whatsoever just drives me nuts. And it makes the game almost impossible to play because I'm either going to be steamrolling everything on easy or everything's going to be just crowding me and giving me absolutely no room to move on normal. And I can't deal with it. I will admit it, I can't deal with it. I don't know who came up with this idea, but it was a really bad idea, and it really screws the latter half of the game over. And it's a shame, because I will at least give Final Fantasy VII Remake one thing that I enjoyed, and that's the overall spectacle of it all. Especially when you compare this to, like, the original Final Fantasy VII. Doing things like trying to stop the attack on the Sector 7 plate, and the highway, well, they actually give you like a bike section earlier on to let you play around with it. And just a bunch of the events that happen, like the boss fights. They all look great, they all sound great, they all have some fantastic animations going on. It's just a really well presented whole. And then it goes down to the gameplay, and the gameplay has all the enemies just swarming you, and it just drives you mad. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they kind of upped how aggressive the AI are towards the later chapters. I mean, that's how big of an issue it is. It's so big that it made me want to stop playing the game entirely. And it's a shame, because when you got all sorts of like really cool cutscenes like this one, and these are all in-engine, by the way. And that just makes it even more impressive, because it's really hard to tell that it's in-engine. And I will give them a lot of credit. Like, I said before that it looks real nice, but the game is 100 gig, which is ridiculously big by most standards. And the thing about being ridiculously big, they said that they wanted to give you a lot of unique resources so that it didn't feel like you were trading over the same place twice. And for the most part, they pull that off until they make you backtrack, which is just weird. Like, you put in so much effort to give players, like, a unique place to trudge through every single time, and then you go back on that by making us go back through the same areas for just long treks of BS. And it's just weird, dude. There are some other minor things you can do. Like, you can get music discs that have remixes of Final Fantasy music, which is great. There are summon battles, which are arguably like the most fun battles in the game, where you have to, like, there's only 2 of them that I've fought so far, but the 2 of them are actually the funnest fights in the game, where you have to fight Shiva and a fat chocobo to unlock their summons, and those are ridiculously fun just because of the amount of weird things they do. They feel like some of the better battles in Final Fantasy XIV, basically, where you have to plan around their attacks. What else is there? There is apparently a mode where you get to go back and play the individual chapters in order to get things like steal items, mini games, you name it. They let you go back and do it. But again, I didn't finish the game, so I didn't get to experience that. I also played with the English voice acting, which is actually pretty good. Only downside being it runs into the same problem that a lot of these, like voice acted RPGs have, where the overall like repetitiveness of the voice acting starts to get to you, especially things like battle cries or like after battle snippets of talking to each other, where you start hearing the same things over and over again. It was cute when Barrett did the Final Fantasy theme as a victory hum the first time, but once he's done it 10 times, it really starts to get on your nerves. So yeah, overall benefits, overall the good things about Final Fantasy VII. The combat, once it starts, the overall spectacle, and at least when it begins, and you know, like during the first few bits, it is a pretty damn faithful adaptation of Final Fantasy VII, minus a few things that just like seem like they're out of nowhere. Like after having read up on the ending, because again I didn't finish the game, but after having read up on it, yeah, I can understand what those ghostly dudes are, but they are definitely not in the original. I was kind of confused by their presence. And the presentation is top-notch. Like, everything looks great. The cutscenes look like they're pre-rendered, despite the fact that they're in-engine. And it is legitimately just a fantastic little spectacle of being able to play a PlayStation 1 RPG game in the PlayStation 4 era, and having it look almost exactly like you'd expect, but also having it be over-the-top, shiny, and enjoyable in that way. The bad stuff about it is the overall linearity, with very little to do on the side. I mean, there are the side quests that you can do, but they're kind of uninteresting. They don't really have that much in the way of, variety. They're basically just, go talk to this person, go fight these monsters, and come back here in different variations, more or less. It's more or less that the whole way through. Which is why, by the time the third set of side quests came along, there was like 9 of them. I thought to myself, yeah, this isn't really worth my time. Yeah, the linearity, the side quests, the combat later on where it just turns into every single enemy swarming you, despite the fact that you've got AI companions to back you up, and it makes it almost impossible to do anything just because of how you're taking attacks from all sides all the time. Which just makes it kind of BS, in my personal opinion. And that's pretty much it, really. It just becomes frustrating to play in the second half, and I just don't want to play it anymore. That's the long and the short of it, more or less. Before I talk about the ending, though, because I did read up on spoilers about it, I just want to have like a sort of like, not so much metaphorical discussion about it, but I just want to talk about more to myself, about how people might actually receive it. But with that said, I actually tried playing this on PlayStation Vita Remote Play, back when I was actually enjoying it. And you know what? It works pretty well. I'm not going to lie about that. The overall quality of the controls, and everything's mapped to the front touchscreen, but things like making the AI do commands, locking on, and I don't even remember what L3 does. I don't think it does anything, but the thing is, since all the controls are pretty easily accessible and all the important controls are in the right places, it actually plays pretty well via remote play if your connection holds up. Mine didn't, which means I wasn't able to spend more than a couple of hours at a time playing this on the Vita, but, well, it still worked. Worked pretty well. So, it's interesting what they've decided to do with the remake. And considering that it's literally called Final Fantasy VII Remake, I can't say I'm surprised that they went the direction that they did, but I gotta admit, it's a little odd. A bit of a weird decision to make, and admittedly after reading up on it and thinking to myself, you know what, that actually sounds kind of cool. Maybe I should finish the game and see if it actually turned out that way. Then I didn't finish the game. Because go me, right? But yeah, it's a really neat idea to basically set it after the original game, and then have it so that you can, not only is there something trying to actually keep you on the straight and narrow, but defeat that straight and narrow thing so that the game can actually go in any direction that they want. And if the game was better, I might have actually let him get away with that. But I just gotta say that considering that the game didn't turn out fantastically as is, I don't trust them to really not screw this up. And I also have a couple of other misgivings about it. The main thing being that Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't turn out so well in the story department either. Another Square Enix venture that took years to make and millions upon millions of dollars, that also basically ended up having a screwed up story for one reason or another, to the point where the biggest complaint I heard about Kingdom Hearts 3 was that it was basically just an ad for Disney stuff for 90% of the game, and they didn't actually bother doing anything story relevant until the very end. But yeah, I just gotta say, it honestly, it's a neat idea. I just don't trust these guys to pull it off, because there are so many neat ways you could take an alternate universe, but at the same time in the future retelling where they know what's going to happen, but now that we've changed it, something different might happen entirely. The question is, what will they change? Because there are so many things that have kind of changed from this already, like bloody Wedge definitely doesn't die, at least at the point that I'm at, which is really bizarre. At least Wedge. I'm not going to spoil what happens to the other two, but considering this is Final Fantasy VII, it might be obvious. But it will be interesting to see how they change it, but I don't think I'm going to be bothering because, well, as I said, the gameplay eventually frustrated me so much that I just found myself not wanting to play it. But yeah. Bloody, of course I start making noise outside as soon as I need to actually get some videos recorded, but screw me, right? So yeah, I actually did buy it, I actually did play it, and started out great, just gets worse as it goes on, and by like the 20-hour mark I thought to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. Even being that close to the end, I was still running into walls that were absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, screw it. I don't really care. I'll probably just watch like the ending when it turns up on YouTube after the embargo gets lifted, which is like the day this video comes out. So Whatever. Chances are this is probably going to be like Kingdom Hearts, and it's going to take another 5 years to come out anyway, but... Well, we'll see. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll let you watch the rest of this footage that I've got. I'll see you all next time.
Come on now! Try me. That'll do. Still in it. Really? Get ready. Time to burn. I told you we were gonna push it past the red line! In the blink of an eye! Alright. Open up the throttle! Burn! Shall I keep you company? Open up the throttle! Anytime now. Shall I keep you company? Open up the throttle. Shall I keep you company? Calling fire. I only have eyes for you. Right. Open up the throttle! What a wonderful gift you've given to me! Oh, that's the stuff! Let's finish this. Satisfied?
With such fleeting pleasure? Hardly. There are higher heights to which you and I can still soar.
Okay, boys! Give them everything you've got! But kill the swordsman first!
We really must do this again. Until then, try not to die. I'll see you on the road, my friend.
God damn it! Let's go. Right.
all you can!
Friendly! Friendly! Stand down!
Your team shouldn't be here. Glad yours is. Come here.
Wedge will be fine, but you won't be if they start asking questions.
And who are they?
First guests to the party, another avalanche cell. Our holier-than-thou friends from the old guard. It's always their way or the highway. Lately, they've been a real pain in the ass. Till now.
So then why are they here?
Beats me. We've been on the outs ever since our cell got labeled too extreme. Though they're the ones running around with mil-spec gear. Word is, they've cut a deal with Wutai. Promised them all the materia in Midgar, apparently. Think there's any truth to that?
You tell me.
Sometimes, I think we're the only ones who've realized the war's over. Okay, mission complete. Let's make our way back to the lot.
Right.